Hello all, and welcome to today's presentation on isolation, multi-generational perspectives. My name is Ashia McReynolds. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and dually licensed as a drug and alcohol counselor. Moreover, I am a doctoral student at North Central University, where I'm earning my doctorate degree in marriage and family therapy. I would like to thank the City of Carson for today's virtual event to provide mental health resources to community members. And if you should have any questions for me or seek additional information, please feel free to contact me. I will be at the live panel at 1 p.m. and I'm sure that they'll be able to upload some documents to the website so that you may obtain them. So today's agenda is pretty brief, but I will list a few terms and definitions for some background knowledge so that we're all on the same page of where I may be pulling definitions. We'll look at multi-generational perspectives. We will then go into some coping strategies when it comes to isolation. I will pose a few questions for self-reflection in which you may answer during the live forum, again at 1 p.m. And then we'll conclude. And hopefully you'll have a few takeaways and new perspectives of other generations as well as yourself and how we all handle COVID-19 pandemic. So for terms and definitions, many of these I will not go into deep detail about. They're on your screen. You can read them for yourself just to wrap your mind around where the topic is coming from, so that we have a clear understanding of the approach and that our minds are here looking at multi-generational perspectives. So first you'll see anxiety, and then we have the term coping. We have the clinical definition for depression. We have the definition for isolation. Also understanding that isolation has three different types. So we have interpersonal, intrapersonal, and existential. Interpersonal is akin to loneliness. Often repeated that it's not the quantity of your relationships that matter, but it's the quality. So we're looking at that interpersonal experience with others, where we can be in a room with many, but still feel lonely. The intrapersonal isolation is a part that you may experience something traumatic or something disturbing, and you just don't feel whole again. So internally, there's an isolation from yourself. So that is our second definition there. And then for existential isolation, we're looking at loneliness, which has many approaches. That maybe an example would be your experience about an event, something like COVID-19, and how you experienced the impact of COVID-19 may be different from someone else. So we may be attuned, we may be talking, but that event is particular to me. It's isolated to me. We may have commonalities, but you also have the incident that is common to you. So we help bridge that gap of what I'm feeling may not be exactly what you're feeling, but we have some commonalities. So hopefully that makes sense and I didn't make it too wordy. We'll then move on to loneliness. Loneliness is comes about from isolation as a lack of social connections. And so while we were in isolation, we also experienced isolation, possibly within our homes or our broader family group or our friends or our community members, right? Multi-generational can be interchanged with transgenerational or intergenerational. So when you hear that, those words, they're all about the same. And it just means that we're looking at 3 or more generations. Quarantine, resilience, and transgenerational trauma. Multi-generation perspectives. Every person will react differently to COVID-19, and we all have. And based on these experiences that we've encountered, generations have responded differently. Many articles have been published with a great amount towards our older adults. Um, so, what we do know is that key differences in how generations are responding to COVID-19 is um, is truly indicative. Um, Older people were more susceptible, and when it comes to the vaccinations or not, um, they're the first ones that they're offered to, and stores opened up earlier to accommodate. And it's because coronavirus is easier for them to catch. Whereas younger generations were most worried about someone getting sick, not wanting to get a parent sick or a grandparent or great grandparent sick. Although no one knows for sure what the long-term consequences of the pandemic will be, experts do predict it will have a lasting impact on people of all generations. And this is something that isn't particularly new, but we'll talk about this later. So let's start with the silent generation. The silent generation were more and are more vulnerable when it comes to um, health dimensions, their social dimensions, and their economic dimensions. Um, the silent generation, they have resiliency, and we've been able to witness this throughout the years, throughout time. They were faced with World War II, Korean War, experienced civil rights movement, Vietnam, polio vaccinations, and the list goes on. Many other generations are concerned for them and try to take care of them. They again are considered the most vulnerable to COVID due to physical health, mental, social, and economic factors. So we really want to take our time and make sure that we're addressing this generation and making sure that they are getting their basic needs, food and medications, and checking in with them when it comes to isolation. Trying to connect as much as possible. If it's a drive-by wave, or I can only talk to you from a certain distance. But when it comes to older population, connection is everything. It's very important for teenagers to have connection, and early childhood age to have connection, and for middle-aged adults as well. However, it's the older generations that really connect and inspire and motivate and keep each other going through the human connection. As we move forward, we have baby boomers, um, also considered an older generation. And again, we have much research on 65 and older. When it comes to the baby boomers, um, when they lived in multi-generational households, they faced challenges due to factors such as younger generations being exposed to other people at work and at school. And this increased their chances to catch and spread the contagious disease. For older adults who lived with others, as well as older adults that lived alone, access to primary care and mental health professionals um, is a key component to help counter the isolation. Um, when you go to the doctor, there were other people there, with masks on, and that connection, having that social integration, that social connection was important. During the beginning of the pandemic and still now. I'm not sure as to how many people have gone away from telehealth sessions and are doing more in person, but these are ways, doctor's appointments, mental health appointments, seeing their loved ones, families, again, a drive-by, or a community event such as this, of a virtual event for resources to come out and to get connected. Programs that assisted with food delivery, very important. Programs that consisted of non-contact food pickup were vital during high peaks of the pandemic and help decrease isolation amongst this group. What we also found to decrease isolation is that many grandparents took on greater roles with their grandchildren, supervising their online learning and giving them academic support, which was a little bittersweet. Previous versions of learning versus current ways that children learn. I'll say old math versus new math. You got a lot of children that say that's not the way the teacher taught it. So we see there where generations begin to interact and join together and help each other out. Older generations teaching and allowing the younger ones to learn, and the younger generations also teaching the older generations, especially when it comes to technology. So let's just look at a different generation. I don't want to take too much time. Oh, here's a graph, and it speaks for itself. When polled, how well are you coping with the impacts of COVID-19? You can see Gen Z very well is 21%, Millennials 26%, Gen X 29%, Boomers 33%, and Silent Generation 39%. And we had about matching numbers with not well amongst Gen Z and Millennials. However, we saw the decrease with Gen X, Boomers, and Silent Generation, where Silent Generation, they weren't doing well, 5%, Boomers 12, Gen X 15, Millennials 24. And again, it's because we have that resiliency that's a characteristic of Silent Generation and Boomers that help promote them to face what's going on and through experience, cope. Here's another graph, the percent who rate health as very good to excellent based on generations. So we have physical health as well as mental health. And so let's look at Gen X. Gen X, our middle-aged adults, were impacted the most financially, primarily because these are the top earning years for this generation. So many had to transition to working from home, providing children with assistance for online learning, and they dealt with loss of employment, unemployment, layoffs, had childcare concerns. And they also are in the middle. They're that bridge generation where you have the older generation that you're concerned about as parents and grandparents, but you also have the younger generations as your children, that you're focused on both. So you're in the middle, and here we see where this generation had to work with many generations, a bridge generation or a sandwich generation. That's what I'm trying to say. Because many Gen Xers are caring for children and older parents, they're making their way through the COVID-19 pandemic. This generation, they were referred to as the latchkey generation. So overall, to say prepare to live in isolation, because we often came home and parents weren't there. So we had to learn how to take care of things on our own and keep the household going and homework done and chores before parents oftentimes got home. So handling responsibility is a key point for this generation and how they decrease isolation. It's also a very independent generation of people, and that have experienced other events that have impacted social well-being. such as post-civil rights movement, depending on the year born, and Gulf War. So as a society, these were some of the things that Gen X experienced. I will add also for Gen X that they have a mixture of the old and the new. So where more technology began to come into play, Gen X had the first like personal computers and CD players. So when it also came to isolation during the pandemic, they were able to use that technology to stay connected, participate in Zoom meetings, and work from home quite easily. That's a generalization. I won't say quite easily. It was a challenge for many. So then we have millennials. When it comes to COVID-19 and isolation, there was much press given to millennials who were seen as not taking the pandemic seriously. But when we take a deeper look at the generation, they're one of collaboration and they value teamwork. So to shut down a pub or to shut down events where they weren't able to connect and be their authentic self, you can see how it looked defiant, but they were also trying to work through who they are as a generation. So as we look at the millennial generation or millennials, there was a millennial versus boomer division. And that division came because millennials were viewed as not taking COVID-19 and isolation or stay-at-home orders seriously. Media paid a lot of attention on and towards them still going out, pubs and parties, while boomers were considered to take the pandemic more seriously. And when you really look at the characteristics of the millennials, collaboration and teamwork are two characteristics that stand out for them. So when we look at the world from their lens, they're probably trying to figure out why are we shutting everything down. But as time has gone on, most people became compliant. And with this generation, they were impacted by the Great Recession. When they were born into the America of economic boom and watched their parents struggle during this time of the Great Recession. So as a society, as a whole, for Americans, this is what they've witnessed, and isolation for them may have started when they were able to do more extracurricular activities. And when the Great Recession happened, those activities were reduced or taken away. So here, with technology, I'm kind of segueing away from that, they had iPods and MySpace. They were a social media platform beginners, and they grew up with how we now see technology. Millennials have been identified as accepting change, and that is something that was helpful with decreasing isolation and feelings of isolation, simply because they connected to technology. Many Zoom meetings and Zoom meetups were marketed towards millennials, online yoga and meditation and art. And these were outlets that this generation, they were able to connect to easily. So now we have Gen Z. They are ethnically diverse. Looking through their perspective and their lens, they experience parents going through financial situations due to the Great Recession. Therefore, they're more financially minded. They're considered five screeners. They could have two computer screens up, a tablet, a smartphone, a TV, and music on another device going all at the same time while playing a video game. This is just how the minds of this generation may work. In that many are avid gamers, and they do have a lot of screen time. It was noticed, or the most salient key point is that prior to COVID-19, this generation were experiencing feelings of isolation, which led to underdeveloped social skills. So with COVID, it just kind of increased, magnified what they were dealing with, this generation, with mental health concerns, and especially with social anxiety. Again, I'm kind of framing this as adolescents and teens, but their sleep patterns are different. And according to Sleep Foundation, I believe .org, when they do studies on adolescents in different age groups, it is identified that teenagers do have hormones that come in later in the night. So they're considered more night owls, or in vampire mode, or and they like to use the word nocturnal. And that is because that's where they connect while gaming or watching other gamers on YouTube. And so we want to pay attention to this generation, and simply because when they isolate, sometimes that isolation is for self-reflection or self-awareness, or just alone time to process what all that they are going through. Many stressors identified with this generation were school pressures, going from on campus courses and switching to online, and not being able to connect with friends, and not being able to connect with teachers. So again, we want to pay close attention to this generation when it comes to isolation, and just modify whether it is of a healthy self-awareness component, or if it is leading to other mental health concerns. Okay, Generation Alpha. This is the final generation that I'll be speaking about. They are the newest members here on planet Earth. While many of them are still infants, the oldest possibly in grade 5. It is estimated that they are being born around the world each week at about 2.5 million. They are considered extremely tech savvy. They were born with devices in their hands. So Generation Alpha, their most prominent thus far experience that we've all experienced, all generations, is COVID-19. Again, they're going to consider the most educated, and they have new learning modules that are specifically personalized for them. So when it comes to AI and technology, again, it's incorporated into who they are. This is one generation that during the pandemic, kindergartners didn't go to kindergarten, or they didn't have their kindergarten graduation, as we saw with other milestones, with high school graduates or college graduates, baby showers and weddings. And when we were at such events, we saw the integration of generations and family, and unfortunately the spread of COVID-19. We would hear about cases where it was contagious and people caught it and had to deal with that. And we experienced loss due to that as well. So when it comes to the different multi-generational perspectives, taking a look at each generation and kind of how they see the world and how they move in the world. And then we place that into our home, where it is more captured, and you have 3 generations in one household. Or maybe your family unit is of friends, or your family unit are, people in the community, however you define family. We all experience the same thing at the same time. And that I'll go into that in a moment. But let's provide you with some coping strategies. We want to make sure that we stay connected. Vital and key, to the best of our ability, the best way that we can. So here we want to talk about different coping strategies, some that you may have implemented, may reflect back upon to see if you want to re-implement those, and maybe some new ideas. So we want to stay connected to the best of our ability, adhering to any social distancing or quarantine orders that may have been set or currently set or possibly set again. We don't know. Maintain basic needs such as food, medications, masks if they're still required where you are. Create a daily routine, stand in the house. They used to refer to it as cabin fever. Stand in the house too long can start with some psychological challenges. So we want to make sure we keep a routine, that we maintain physical and mental activities. So Sudoku or crossword puzzles, reading, something entertaining, and some exercising or some stretching. Pursue outside activities with honor to social distancing, if that still persists. Um, Walks, clear your head, clear your mind, get your heart going. We want to make sure that we manage our thoughts, mood, and emotions. Pay attention to what you're thinking. I believe some of the other workshops were on mindfulness. And so understanding those skills and adapting those. Pay attention to your mental health and any psychiatric concerns. Make an appointment with a mental health therapist. Take care of others, take care of the elderly, take care of people that take care of people. Everyone is, again, experiencing stress and anxiety and some forms maybe of depression or something clinically diagnosed that we don't know what people are experiencing. But if we connect with them, we can get on a human connection to understand. And accept the reality and embrace your feelings. So if there's a time that you do feel sad, feel that sadness. Ask the sadness, why is it there? And what is it there to teach you? And what can you do in the next 5 minutes to decrease that sadness and increase different emotions? Use isolation as a chance to grow. During social isolation quarantine, many people began new hobbies, discovered new talents, honed their skills, worked on their creative side, and grew businesses, learned more about themselves, how they identified with others, how people in their household they may not have connected with in years because of the go, go, go schedule that everyone had been on. However, isolation or quarantine brought some of those families together, and some of them exposed that we're different people in life. So however you experience isolation, we want you to take it as an opportunity to grow. So just like the Great Depression and 9/11 led to changes in how people live their lives, it is evident that COVID-19 will do the same and leave major markers for both adults and kids of all generations. Um, we may not have a clear understanding of long-term consequences, but we do know that the generations will be affected for years to come. So when it comes to transgenerational trauma, it is something that we look at as to how traumatic historical events impact different generations and may even be transmitted through generations. And so that's why mental health and understanding isolation and multi-generational perspectives is important. Now, being reflective, and after you have been provided with some coping skills, I would like for you to think about the following questions. How did you experience COVID-19 quarantine? Did you have any mental health concerns or challenges? How did your mental health improve? What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about others? Did you isolate during quarantine? And how did you cope? What are some of your self-discoveries? From one generation to all the others, this information is not one size fits all. As individuals, we all have worries and stressors, concerns, and ways that we cope. The importance is to give yourself compassion, grace, and kindness, as well as to others. Human connectedness is vital. My sincere condolences to those who lost loved ones and well wishes to those who were infected as well as affected by COVID-19. I would like to thank the City of Carson for the opportunity to present today and all community members who chose to join. If you have any questions or comments, please join today's Zoom at 1 p.m. for the live Q&A session. Thank you.